Angela, and I have finally moved. So this is a new apartment. We are actually all moved in. It is very exciting. Got different shelves behind me, same books. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about times when I felt represented in books as an asexual person. And this isn't going to be like strictly like ace representation. It's more about times when I saw aspects of myself reflected in other people's stories. And most of this actually isn't going to be about asexual people really at all. And that's really because honestly, I haven't felt like personally represented a lot by the asexual rep I've seen in books. There's very, very little of it at this point. I literally never expect to see it. And what I'm talking about here is more things feeling like very relatable for me personally, right? So obviously that's going to vary for every person. I have felt like genuinely represented a couple of times in terms of screen stuff. So when Todd Chavez came out on BoJack Horseman, I personally found that whole plotline very relatable, especially the part where he sort of followed a cute girl around, and then when she came on to him, literally ran away. Yeah, so Todd was one, and definitely Joe March in The New Little Women as well. So there are points that have very much resonated for me, but when it comes to books, that hasn't really been true. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Pretty much all of the books that I have read that are about ace characters are either romance or YA or sometimes both. And I'm not a really big reader in either romance or YA. So that's part of it. But honestly, it more has to do with the fact that when I'm looking for representation, in a lot of ways, what I'm looking for is sort of roadmaps into the future. And I am someone that probably won't have a romantic relationship, so reading about people sort of navigating their asexual identity while also navigating relationships, well, that's super important, and I really enjoy reading about it. It's not really helpful for me when I envision my life. And then with YA, obviously, if I'm reading about characters that are younger than me, that's not really going to help me figure out what my future looks like. And then also, the couple of books that I have read have been set in college, and when I started at my college, you couldn't be openly out as queer, and that changed during the time that I was there, but it made it hard for me, particularly at a time when I was very much questioning my identity in a lot of ways, to sort of do that experimenting and do that work that I needed to do to figure myself out. So basically I just have baggage around college, quite frankly, when it comes to orientation stuff that makes those books maybe less joyful than they would be otherwise. It isn't necessarily going to be traditional ace representation, but I wanted to speak to just moments that resonated for me. And a really big theme that is probably going to come up a lot is that I am someone that has always really wanted to be a parent, literally my whole life. From the time when I was 3 or 4, when I was in elementary school, I would draw floor plans of a future house that I might have, and I would draw lots of rooms for children. When I was in high school, I was reading parenting books, and so it's just, I don't know, parenting and being a mom is something that has always been really exciting to me and really important to me, and so that's definitely going to be a theme that probably comes up in some of these as well. These books are mostly in chronological order, and it's mostly going to be pretty spoiler-free, with one major exception. So the first book, and I think that this was the first time that something really resonated with me in the story, was super fast, super small. It was in Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is the first book in the Expanse series, which has since blown up and become very big and has a TV show. But basically, there's a character who, in passing, it's mentioned that he has something 10 parents, I think. So they all raised him together. And yeah, some of his parents were dating each other, some of them weren't. They all lived together on this big ranch and raised their kid. And that idea of sort of communal living and parenting and being a part of a family without necessarily having to be in a romantic or sexual relationship just pinged to something that I was interested in. I honestly, at that point, I didn't have any of my stuff figured out, so I didn't know why I liked that so much, but I definitely did. The second book I wanted to talk about is the only nonfiction book on this list, and that is The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes, which was a memoir written by the television writer Shonda Rhimes, where she talks about various things. It's a great memoir. I recommend it. So basically this memoir chronicles a year of Shonda's life that was really central for her and changed a lot of things. And there's a point where she talks about how she'd been engaged to a guy for a really long time and she really liked him. She was super attracted to him, but she realized she didn't actually want to marry him. She didn't actually want to be married at all. So she broke things off with him and it was bittersweet, right? Because she had then hurt this person that she cared a lot about, but it was also like a kind of liberating and joyful experience. That chapter of that book meant so much to me, and honestly, it still does. Particularly because at that point in her life, Shonda already had 3 daughters that she had like adopted. She'd been the parent for like, I think over a decade by that point. And it was just like, honestly, this like really deliberate and joyful depiction of choosing to remain single. And that was just really powerful and really joyful and inspiring for me. The third book that I wanted to talk about is probably the most like traditional representation, but I think it was the first time that I encountered like an explicitly asexual person in a book, and that was in The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan, set in sort of like a Victorian-ish time. And there's a character in the book who is a woman, is from like pretty high society. There's lots of pressure on her to get married, which is something she does not want to do. She has quasi run away from those obligations, and then she's talking to another character, and that character is like asking her what she wants for her future. And they don't say it in these words because they're like Victorian ladies, but basically the protagonist is like, so what do you want for your future? And this woman who's like run away from marriage is essentially like, well, I know I don't want to have like any sort of relationship with a man, and I knew that sometimes people like are maybe interested in relationships with women, but I've looked into that and I'm not interested in either. And then she just continues to live in the series and does her thing. It was just like some really subtle, really nicely done ace rep, and I really, really appreciated it. The fourth book I'm going to talk about is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and this one is very spoilery. And also, if you have not read that book and you've never tried, you seriously should go pick it up. Jemisin is like hands down one of the greatest writers of our generation. Those books are like very important and also just really well done and brilliant, and seriously go try them at least. Basically, there's a point in the book where our main character, who is presumably a straight woman, don't think it really ever comes up, but yeah, so we have like a straight woman and then a gay man and a bisexual man, and these are not labels that any of them use because sexuality exists within the cultural context, blah blah blah, but yeah, so we got straight woman, gay man, bisexual man. And for various reasons, the straight woman and the gay man have a biological kid together, and then all 3 of them are sort of like in this relationship, so they are both in both a romantic and sexual relationship with the bisexual man. And that means that the straight woman and the gay man essentially have this very intimate platonic relationship that also includes co-parenting and raising their child together. Like, it's not that I felt seen, obviously, in that relationship, but it remains, I think, one of the most important relationships I've seen in a story, because there was such intimacy and permanence between these 2 characters, and they were so clearly like a family without having any of the pressures of a romantic or sexual relationship. And it was just really beautiful and joyful and well done, and I think about it honestly still all of the time. I mean, I love that book for a lot of reasons, but the relationship in it is definitely one of them. And then the 5th book, which is one that if you have ever met me in real life, I talk about constantly, is Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. Basically, the whole premise is that it's written like a 17th century novel, but set in the 24th century, which is very much my thing. And basically, this is a world where there are like flying cars that go super fast. You can get anywhere on the planet in less than 2 hours. And so geography is suddenly much less important, right? Like, where you live doesn't hugely matter. And so as a result, the social structure of the world has changed, and pretty much everyone lives in these things called bashes, which basically is just like your little community family thing. So essentially the way that it works is that people go off to college, and when they're in college they find like other humans that they would like to live with, and then eventually they all form a bash together. So you usually have somewhere between like 6 and 12-ish adults, and they all live together. Some of them are probably in romantic relationships with each other, right? Some of them probably couple off or do various things, but they're just all sort of together. And like, if anyone wants children, they all raise children together, and they're just like a little family unit. And it completely blew my mind because it was the first time really that I saw a social structure that I felt like made sense to me and that I could see myself in, and I wanted so badly. I talk about bashes in my real life basically all of the time. So yeah, those are my 5 books. I know it's not like really a traditional representation list, but I think one of the things that's really interesting is the ways that sort of our identities and our experiences shape how we appreciate media and what we think about it, and I really wanted to talk about all of these books in this context. I'd be really curious to see like what kinds of books or other media resonate with any of y'all for like perhaps unusual reasons, or even if you just want to share something that you think is really great and more people should hear about. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a little thumbs up. If you'd like to hear from me again, please consider subscribing. I think that's about it, lovelies. Be well, take care, happy reading. Bye, loves.